Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope everybody's having a great day today. We are about to get right into it and kind of go over what we've got going on, some of the trials and tribulations and hurdles that we are all facing when it comes to off-marketplace. Want to talk a little bit about that today. Make sure everybody's comfortable with our Medicare products and process for this year. And also just kind of make sure that we've got a good State of the Union. As we know, we've got a whopping 3 days into our Medicare open enrollment starts for 2018. We've got some phenomenal products this year. I think we've got a lot of opportunity in the Medicare space. Good products, good ancillary benefits, good extra benefits all the way around. And I think that, our network is not slimming down and being sculpted away from underneath us is going to help us a great deal this year, and really a good competitive landscape. Yeah, it don't matter. So as we are looking at what we've got going on, I also do, as I'm waiting for the Florida Blue site to load, it had some server issues when I tried to log in before. I thought that was funny. Talk a little bit about the aligned accounts as well, which should be showing up in all of your teams, ISTs, Access Blue. However, that aligned accounts is still not functioning for all. Shocker. So let's kind of talk first about Medicare. Let's kind of go through, basics on the Medicare. I know that Mr. Falco had invited most of you to join our preparatory meetings. I don't know, has anybody joined any of those meetings? We started them last week, kind of talked a little bit about them. Did anybody think that it was good investment of their time to join? Just want to see if anybody on the call has entered any of those trainings. The silence is deafening. Apparently not. Okay. So I will spend a little bit more time on it then, since we did not do that. We go, as we are looking at our Medicare products this year, just some kind of things that we want to be careful of. For 2018, we do have a couple of little hurdles. With those hurdles are going to be where I see CTMs that could potentially be a problem, going to be in formularies, making sure that our formularies and we're using the correct formularies based on the products. Now, when you're looking at the products, for example, you will see each name of the product that it relates to. So be careful and making sure that you're using the right products and right formularies based on that product. With the formulary list, because there are subtle differences between them, how they are treated in the donut hole, not in the donut hole, that's why they've created these different formularies. So please make sure that you're conscious of that. I really feel that that's probably one of our biggest problems this year that we could have when it comes to CTM's Medicare complaints. So, just please be careful with that. As we look as well, when we're going to go through a pre-enrollment book, just making sure everybody's comfortable with that. Your enrollment checklist, which is a mandatory checklist, not mandatory by me, mandatory by Florida Blue. Make sure that you're completing a checklist. You have a copy of that checklist. Get that checklist signed or in some way delivered to your member to make sure that you've done your due diligence in checking drugs and in checking doctors. Also, you want to make sure that you've covered all of the areas that for compliance, and those compliant areas are what we are now replaced with the outbound verification call. And the reason that this is so important is because that if you don't cover these areas at the checklist or at the time of application, and that customers asked any of these questions from Florida Blue via a letter, we do not do the outbound verification call 15 days after the enrollment for Medicare any longer. However, they do get a letter. And if that letter and the customer reads that letter and it states, do you understand that you've applied for a Medicare Advantage plan? This is not a Medigap Medicare supplement plan. It replaces Medicare, original Medicare. Then they say, what are you talking about? I still have my original Medicare. Next thing you know, you've got a CTM. You've got an issue because you didn't do your due diligence. Where it becomes really important to make sure you're doing your due diligence, especially for those of you that have never sold Medicare before, looking to get into the Medicare arena, making sure that you cover drugs and making sure that you understand how those drugs are covered based upon tier, the cost of that drug, whether that is a drug that is covered under Part B as in boy or D as in David, if it has PA, prior authorization, quantity limits, and step therapy. Is everybody comfortable with prior authorization, quantity limits, and step therapy? Know how to explain them, know what they're all about, and understand the importance of going over them? Maybe I should ask, is anybody not comfortable with those areas? They were in your training, if you actually read the training for Florida Blue, but I just need to know if everybody's comfortable with that, because those are CTMs waiting to happen, especially when we come to prior authorization and step therapy. Because with those two areas, if your member is prescribed a quantity limit that is in excess of the FDA amount that is approved to treat a certain condition, then the pharmacist will not fill that amount of meds. So, for example, the easiest way is to kind of go to the other end of the spectrum. If your member is assigned or actually prescribed, 300 Oxycontins a month, they may not be able to get them. So, and I use the Oxycontin as an example because everybody can think about that and can relate to how that would be an exorbitant amount of a medication, but that goes for other medications as well. So please be conscious of that, and you want to address it, because if your member gets a prescription for a large amount and cannot fill it, they could call CMS or they could call you, and that could be a CTM, or it's something that you should have explained at time of sale. Also, step rate therapy is also another big deal. With the step rate therapy, that means that they have other drugs that they must try before they try more expensive drugs. If that member has tried those other medications with a different carrier or earlier, as long as the provider has that in their medical records and writes a note that they have already completed the step rate therapy, and it must include all the drugs that are in the step rate process, then they can get that medication. And some medications do need prior authorization, meaning that the drug needs to have a special note from the doctor for them to get it. B and D, very simple if it's covered under Part B or Part D. Next is going to be the providers. Now, the Florida Blue did fix the provider directory. Thank sweet baby Jesus. So if we look at the provider directory, we know now that we can go back to the way that we were accustomed to doing things and how we were looking for our doctors. Now, just really quickly, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but for example, if you're looking for a doctor, I just want to make sure that I've said this umpteen times, so that way we never have an issue. Select the type of place or facility or type of doctor that we're looking for. We can also go through and we could highlight those specialties, and we do our search. Now, the biggest problem that we have is, oh, that's not going to work. Hold on one second. The biggest problem that we typically see where we get CTMs or we get errors is based upon the location of the physician. So I just want to harp on this a little bit more. So for example, if we were seeing Dr. Matthew Smith and we were seeing Dr. Matthew Smith at one location or the other, he may take one of our policies at one location and he may take another at a different location. So you must be conscious that you're checking the location that your member actually goes to. Very important. We've had a lot of errors with that, not specifically with anyone on this call, just general. So please make sure that you are mindful. Now, where that comes up, a lot of times with specialists like dermatology or doctors that do treatment at the VA. And at the VA, they may only take certain commercial plans and they may not take the individual or Medicare plans at the VA. Or a dermatologist, for example, if that dermatologist has a private practice that's at a different location, and then he's working with a dermatology group at a different location, the access points to that doctor may be different from location to location. So please be conscious that you are looking at that. Now, if we were looking at Dr. Matt Smith and we wanted to see the other plans that Dr. Matt Smith takes, remember you can go down. Now they fixed this. Find him, look at all the plans that he accepts here, so that should expedite the search process and you don't have to do 16 different searches every time you're looking for a doctor. So very important there as well. making sure that you're covering this is important. Making sure that you're going through the checklist, very important. And then, of course, utilizing Medicare.gov is probably your easiest way for you to identify when someone's going to hit the donut hole, when someone's going to get in and out of the donut hole, overall costs, and the competitive landscape for that member, especially when we're looking at other plans. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about utilizing Medicare.gov for a search tool? Now, some of the documentation that you find in Medicare.gov is going to be mostly accurate, but you do need to look at the information. You know, one of the big things as we do, please, if anybody has any questions, please type them in now regarding Medicare.gov. When you're doing your search for this, we come through. We would add our drugs here. So if we had a multitude of drugs, we can go ahead and type these drugs in here. So if we type in a drug here, we can add that drug and dosage. We can go through, we can add another drug. You will see that if I add this drug, then it will ask me if I want to take the levothyroxine sodium or the generic. I can switch to the generic, which you typically want to do if at all possible. And I also want to show a couple of other ones really quickly. Well, let's do this one. And then we can complete our drug list. Now, up on the right-hand side here, once we complete our drug list, you'll be given a few pieces of information that you can retrieve this drug list at a later time. We select the pharmacies, being conscious of our pharmacies. Remember, CVS is an in-network pharmacy, but it is not a preferred pharmacy. Our preferred pharmacies are different. Now, if we wanted to show our preferred pharmacies, and you want to search for your preferred pharmacies, again, if you go to the provider search, we go into find a doctor or more. Again, coming back down, picking our plan. Let's just say, let's pick this one just for fun. We come over here, we are going to search pharmacies. If you ever have a question about your pharmacies, you've got your retail and your retail preferred. So if I select my retail pharmacies, I put in a zip code and I go to search, the search function will show preferred pharmacies. So we do know that our Publix and our Walgreens are two of our preferred pharmacies, but it will show the other pharmacies that are in network. Remember, CVS is out of network with under 65, in network for over 65. However, it is not a preferred pharmacy, and that will be listed there for you. As we go through our Medicare.gov, going back, we continue to our drugs, we continue to plan results, and this is where it's going to show us our plans. Sortable by lowest estimated health and drug costs, sortable by name, and you can go down and you can see, based on these medications, where we end up. So on this particular Hillsborough County, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we're in the 8th position on our classic HMO. So if we want to look at this, we click on the top, we can compare plans, and then we will be able to see overall. Now, when we're looking at the regional PPO, for example, you will show that it shows a deductible. I'll show you that in a minute. We do know that that is an out-of-network deductible. The way that it's displayed here on Medicare.gov, it almost looks like there's an in-network deductible. So if you're talking with your member and you're doing the overall plan itself, please be conscious of that, because it appears that there is a $950 deductible. So you can see here, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because with the quickie pens, I do want to give you a little advice to not get those quickie pens, or to describe those quickie pens as far as the cost of those getting you to the donut hole. Remember that it's the full cost of the drug that is getting you to your donut hole. Once you reach that donut hole, then the cost will increase. And for example, you can see it displayed here. Now, where I want you to be careful is when the initial level of coverage. If you find a drug that has the full cost here to the left, I'll zoom in on that for those of you that may have a little need to go to the eye doctor. And then we have initial coverage looks the same. It's not a covered medication. And you may want to look for a therapeutic alternative. So, Mark, where do I find a therapeutic alternative? Good question. Well, there's a couple places. Google. Really interesting tool. You can look on Google. You can look on My Prime. But you are going to have to do a little search to see if there is a therapeutic alternative. So, for example, if it was a Novolog QuickPen, it may show up as a full cost drug. So every month that this member in the first months of, as you see here, located in the green, you can see that this person is in the initial stage of coverage paying their copays. When they get to July, now they will be entering in the donut hole. And that is, the cost is going to go up there because part of the month and part of their medications are going to be within the copay range. And the second part of those medications are going to be in the coverage gap or the donut hole. So this is going to illustrate that to you. You can give them good information, and then you could also understand what's going to happen when they go to catastrophic coverage. You can see that here are our costs if they use CVS. If they go to the preferred pharmacy, they are still getting through that, but we can see here how that's going to work, what their monthly costs are going to be. Remember, it's not the cost that the member is paying that's getting them to the donut hole. It is the full cost of the drug. So if it was me, I was having this conversation with my member, I would say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Member, I understand that there is a good convenience factor with the QuickPen, and everything is all in one. It's like an EpiPen. You stick it on you hit the button, and boom, you've got your insulin. However, if you are willing to get insulin as a standalone, maybe look at a diabetic pump to talk to your physician because the Quickie pen is very expensive. And nowadays, there are a couple of insulin support medications that people are getting that are just as expensive as the insulin themselves, also being applied and giving as a delivery method with a QuickPen also. So therefore, they may be getting to the donut hole much faster. Because if they've got two drugs that have a full cost of $500, you know, their $1,000 a month is getting them to the donut hole. Next thing you know, they're in the donut hole in March or April rather than July. If you need to change those drugs, you can come down here. This demonstrates what the tier is. This you can see now, this Humalog does have quantity limits, so it gives you that information. Typically with insulin, it's not something that comes up as much. You can change the dosage. Remember, dosage is very important, and that way this is a good illustration. So this will help you a great deal, talking about benefits overall. So you can see some basic benefits. You can view more benefits, but typically once you go use this for the drug coverage, then I would actually get them into talking to someone about, that doesn't look right. Anyway, then I would get them looking at their summary of benefits or the pre-enrollment checklist. So if I go back to the plans, I review to the previous page. Who could tell me what doesn't look right on that page? Did anybody notice that? Same thing I noticed? I don't know if anybody else noticed that. It cost them more money at the preferred pharmacy than it did at the standard traditional pharmacy. That doesn't make any sense to me. I want to find that PPO for you so that way we can, I think I hit the wrong button. Click view all if we're looking for, here we go, PPO. So here, where is it? I can't remember. Okay, see, I'm still getting confused with the name changes, so that happens as well. But if we come into our select PPO and we look at the benefits, this is where I wanted to show you, and we look at the health plan benefits, you can see, maybe they changed it. Maybe it's on the compare screen. Let's go back. Because when you see that 950, if you know the layman who looks at it looks as if it's going to be it's going to be an in-network deductible, which it's not. And if I can't find this super quick, here we go. I'll just compare these two. Maybe it's just on the compare screen. I don't remember how I found it the other day, but here we go. I think you guys kind of get, oh yeah, it's I don't know. Anyway, if you see it in here where it was health plan deductible, it was listed as $950. And maybe they changed it, and then there was an in-network deductible. It said no, but maybe that was updated in the last day or so, because I think it was there yesterday, the day before. Write this information down, everybody. This is the good information that allows you to pull up your drug search at a later time. I actually advise all of our team to enter that information directly on the checklist, so that way you're good to go and you're covered, and you CYA, cover your ass. So that way, if you write this information down, you could retrieve that drug list at a later time, and it just gives you more power if you're talking to the member and they say, hey, I told you I was taking X, Y, and Z medication, and you told me no. You never told me that, sir or madam. At least now you can retrieve what you were told and what you looked up, because why wouldn't you look that up otherwise? All right, any questions? Other things in Medicare, when making sure that you've got your pre-enrollment checklist and your pre-enrollment books, reading through them, going through them with the members. We covered this last night in our training. We actually really spend some time making sure we don't miss anything that needs to be covered from a compliance standpoint. So going through the benefits at a glance, going through the extra benefits, as well as the drug coverage here, so everyone understands. Making sure that you explain the donut hole and how the donut hole works. Very important, makes you compliant and keeps you in the right place. Okay? Any questions? Okay, let's move on to ACA. So as we know, with ACA, a little bit challenging right now. When we are talking about in the dental, hold on, I'm getting a couple questions. Dental, hearing, and vision is not included in the enrollment. Hold on, my phone is blowing up for some reason here. I don't know why. Dental, hearing, and vision is not included in the enrollment book. Are they the same as last year? The dental was included in the enrollment books that I was looking at. So, I mean, it's the extra benefits. So, I mean, when I was looking at it last night, I was looking at it here, and we had the extra benefits that were listed, and they were at the back. So they were in there. So if we've looked at, are you saying in the book that you have, it's not in there? We could take that offline and just make sure you've got the most updated one. The applications are in here, a checklist is in here, and they also had the extra benefits as well as far as what to do. See, silver sneakers, transportation. Some of the other benefits, maybe dental and hearing and vision, aren't all included specifically, but we can check about which one you're talking about, Martin. Okay, moving on to ACA. I know that some of us are a little stressed out about ACA. Yes, understand, I get it. We don't make the rates. It is what it is, okay? When we are looking at ACA, the first thing that I want to kind of cover is making sure that we're comfortable with the aligned accounts process. So everyone will have a tool, and that is in the aligned account. So as agency owners, delegate threes, you already have this in your system and it works. Agents, it'll appear, but it may not work. When we come over to the account management, come down to the aligned accounts. Click on the member search, enter in the information, and this is going to return to you whether obviously you know who's in your book of business. You can check that. You can check that separately. You don't need this for your book of business. Maybe you do. But it's going to tell you if that person is working with another agency, and it's also going to tell you if that is a Z code. Or it's going to tell you it's going to return an M for multiple accounts. So let's address the M because that's the most confusing. If there is a Mark Carbellano with the same date of birth as me, living in the same zip code, then what's going to happen? It's going to return an M. That M is then going to know that there's multiple people that have that, and you're probably going to want to send them to Blue Cross to find out who their agent is. If it returns that there's an agent of record, then if it's not yours, you're probably not going to want to work with that member, and you're going to want to send them to Florida Blue to find out who their agent is and for assistance. And if it turns out it's unassisted, then of course you can work with that member and you would gain the AOR. But the compensation to that member and to that sale is not nearly anything to get excited about. But you know that it's out there, and at least you can gain the AOR for next year. So this is not working for everyone. Don't get alarmed. Hopefully it'll be working for before November 1st, we hope. And then I would give everybody a little snapshot that they will also have this search tool, which will encompass Medicare members. And they're shooting for next year on that, which is good and exciting because remember, they are keeping the AOR unless it is an unassisted application. So they are keeping that AOR with the original writing agent. It's not changing unless it was unassisted through the marketplace. Doesn't matter if their agent is dead. Doesn't matter if their agent is out of the business. That agency is then the agent of record, and they've either assigned someone or the agency owner has made themselves the agent of record. So that being said, just make sure that you're checking and you're using your time wisely. Okay? Couple questions coming in about the rate increases. So let's talk a little bit about that. I had thought that we were having a 28% rate increase, but I've got customers with a 48% rate increase and 31. What's going on? How is this happening? So, the rates increases are an average, but you also have to take into consideration, and this is not going to sound good, feel good, or whatever, but there was a document that was sent out last week from CMS. Lori, the area manager, sent it out. We sent it out as well. That also talked about the way that CMS changed the child ratings. And I'll use an agent that's in our office as an example who's on that silver HSA plan. With that silver HSA plan, he has off marketplace, and it went up an exorbitant amount. It actually went up about 30%. But he's got multiple children on that policy, and how the children are rated now, because they're not doing that simple one age band from 0 to 18. Now they have multiple age bands in there, and that impacted price. You have to remember that if you've got 5 people on the policy or 3 people on the policy and they've all had an age change, now everybody's a year older, plus they're getting a rate increase, therefore it's a ridiculous amount. So, does it feel good? No. Is there a lot of options? Not really. So what can you do with that customer? You could switch them down to a bronze, add some ancillary products. You could switch the network. And Blue Options, as we know, took the biggest hit, as it always does. So it's important that we understand it. It doesn't feel good, right? I mean, we're in the off-market pace, people are most impacted. So they're going to have a hurting. We've got a lot of people that were not subsidized, and we put them in a $5,000 deductible silver plan with no subsidy, like the old 533 plan. They're not happy. They don't feel good. So we're going through the process. Does it make sense to change the network? Does it make sense to drop down to a bronze plan? Maybe add some accident plan to that to help with the overall cost. And we're finding that it's a crapshoot. You have to listen to everybody. You kind of got to commiserate with them a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And from an off marketplace perspective, and I'm going to sound a lot like Blue Cross here, but we are, very competitive in the off marketplace, but it don't feel good, right? And I mean, these rates are absolutely ridiculous. So I agree with all of that. I know that they told us that they were going to be less impacted. And maybe they were, but remember, it's average when they release those rate increases across the state. We also have to consider age changes, and then we also have to consider the age band changes with any children. How will we be affected by executive order that President Trump is expected to sign today to allow health insurance to be purchased across state lines? Well, good luck with that. I mean, let's see what happens. I mean, the problem with that, kind of address it, is that why are you going to buy a policy in Iowa that you can't use here? Who are you going to buy? Who you're going to go to Utah and buy a policy and use it in Florida? They don't have any network. It doesn't really make any sense, right? And if you're talking about Iowa or Utah where insurance is less expensive, how is that going to work with the subsidies? What are the details of it? The devil's always in the details, right? So I wouldn't get excited about it, and I wouldn't worry about it at all. I hope it brings more competition, because more competition means better commissions, right? At the end of the day, if my customer wants to go buy a policy from a company that resides in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they have one doctor here, so be it. Let them go. What are they going to do? How are they going to get those services? There are companies that do business in Florida that cannot survive. Molina has 300,000 members that they're pricing out of the market because they're not profitable. If they're not profitable and they're losing money that they've got to raise their rates that much, and they operate in 3, 4, 5 states, what makes you think it's going to be any different when President Trump signs some order that allows me to go buy insurance elsewhere? I can go buy it, but how am I going to use it? What's my network going to look like? What is that process going to be? And that devil is in the details. And do we think it's going to happen in the next week? No. Is he signing away the individual mandate? No. So you're still going to have insurance. And is it going to be a qualified health plan? Hopefully. But Florida has probably got the best opportunity. We've got multiple carriers here available for our clients. And even the carriers like United, who are a nationwide carrier, Humana, who are a nationwide carrier, they can't be profitable because they don't have the network affiliation. And I think that if you see someone going to Missouri to buy their coverage here, I don't think that that's going to be a big deal. I don't foresee that being the biggest of our problems, quite frankly. I'm not worried. I mean, bring on the competition, quite honestly. We are seeing a 60 to 80% rate increase on Blue Options. Could be, Bill. Blue Options is getting slaughtered. Absolutely. Taking a 30 to 35, or it depends on the area, right? It's not, it's crazy. And you got to think about the insurance commissioner made us raise our rates. Remember that as well. So, it's really going to be, it's an issue. Off-marketplace people are not going to be happy. They're going to have to make a change. And at the same time, Bill, and anyone else who's having this feeling, we need to understand that, they could always go to a short-term medical product. They could always pay the penalty, and they could, roll the dice if they're healthy. If they're not healthy, they don't really have much of a choice. I hate to say it. But manage their expectations accordingly. Write a child-only policy. Remove somebody from the policy if you've got to. They've got to stay insured. Remember, individual mandate still stands, so therefore they would have a penalty of $695 or 2.5% of the household income, or the lowest cost silver plan that they have access to in their area. So if someone's making a good money and they're making $200,000-$300,000 a year, they're looking at a $2,000-$3,000 penalty minimum, and they don't have coverage. So it's a balance. We're talking to a lot of people now about $5,000 to $75,000 to $10,000 short-term deductible plans, paying the penalty, getting some ancillary products, dropping to a different network such as Blue Select or even My Blue, depending on the area. Whatever we have to do to keep them blue. But there's really, unfortunately, not a whole lot of places for them to go. Bill's making a really good point going back to buying across state lines, and this happened all the time, and we used to sell Blue Cross like this often, is if you have a problem with your policy and you bought it in Iowa, then you have to call the Iowa Insurance Commissioner when you have a problem. When you purchase a policy in Florida from a Florida company, then you can call the Department of Insurance in Florida. So that's a good takeaway or a good selling point if someone says, well, I'm going to go buy my policy in New Mexico. Great. Find out what the benefits are. Find out what the network is and give me a call. Thank you, Eddie. All right. So, other than the challenges with what we're dealing with off marketplace, hopefully we're all comfortable with processing an application. I know that this was having this issue this morning. Mine was doing this before. I wanted to go over that again and making sure everybody's comfortable with the quote, comfortable with that process. And if I can't show anybody, so we'll have to table that for next week. So let's open it up to any questions, and then I'll let everybody go for the day. Tim, you're going to want to talk to your agency owner about that. The checklist, where is the checklist? The checklist is in the pre-enrollment application as well on IST. And I'm not sure if Gigi has scraped out all of those documents and put them in your Dropbox. All right, any other questions? Justin, talk with your agency owner. I believe the enrollment links are available now. The email proposal tool with the live proposal is also available now as well. I believe we showed that last week to everyone. So that way you can send someone a live proposal and they can enroll. All right. Very good. One last question coming in from Paul. If someone buys blue in Iowa, can't they use the blue card here in Florida? I don't know. I don't sell Iowa blue. I would tell them no. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Let's just get through it. Let's move forward. If he signs the order, how are they going to facilitate that in the next 2 weeks? So I'm going to go on the marketplace. So let's just kind of talk about this because I don't know if Paul is the only one that's concerned about this cross-state line thing, but you understand this, right? The marketplace opens in 2 weeks, and the marketplace and the government, well, they don't talk very well now, do they? So what that would mean is that if I'm going to get a subsidy, they're going to have to change the system to where I can pick the state that I want to buy a policy in, right? So I go in, I determine my eligibility. Where is my application? It's in Florida. So then I can go over, or are they only talking off marketplace? Are they talking on and off? Do you have to get the subsidy in the state that you reside in? Well, then we have to deal with who's doing Medicaid share of costs, who's doing all of these other things, who took extra money for the going under 150 of the FPL and blah, 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 blah. I think that it's too close for any of that stuff to happen right now. Okay? And if it does happen, it's great, right? It's not going to happen overnight. I surely don't see it happening in 2 weeks. And then if open enrollment is done, if it's a qualified health plan, they still need an SEP. They still need an enrollment mechanism. So does he sign the order and then it gives us an extension until the end of January because now everybody can buy through state lines? Well, I am sure that there are people that would love to buy our Florida Blue plans. Because if you look at what our Florida Blue plans look like compared to other states, take the cost perspective out, to a subsidized individual, we'll sell a whole crap load of policies in other states. Does that mean I'm going to have a non-resident license in that state? Does that mean that I'm going to have to be authorized to sell in that state? I'm going to have to be certified because they're going to use it somewhere else? All the details that I don't think are going to happen today or tomorrow. But what do I know? My crystal ball is broken. If I knew that, I'd have the lottery numbers and I wouldn't be dealing with all this stress. Bill is making a good point. If each state had 3 carriers, each carrier had 10 policies, the client would need to review 1,500 plans before making a decision. So you know what that does is even compounds more how they need a trusted advisor. Great point, Bill. Thank you. Is there a faster way to renewal rates than renew the client besides manage the account? You could just run a quote for 2018 with the appropriate ages. All right. Okay, everybody, I got to go. I hope I've answered most everybody's questions. I know there's a couple that we need to take offline. Hope everybody has a great day, and I will talk to everybody next week. Thank you.